Welcome to Confessing the Blues, a podcast about the blues music that matters to dancers. This is episode number 10 for May 2010. My name is Keith Big Papa Shapiro from Austin, Texas.
And I'm Jonathan No Nickname Pecho from Dallas, Texas.
And we've got a really great show for you this month, a little bit longer of a show than last month. We are going to take a moment to talk about Lena Horne, who passed away this month. We've got some fantastic new music for you, including a full track from the Blue Vipers of Brooklyn, who we talked about a little bit last month. We've got our Blue Shout rap session. I'm not sure what we'll...
Hey, as long as you rap, we're fine.
Yeah. And I was able to get a couple of song selections from the Blue Shout instructors. If anyone else manages to get their stuff together for next month, we'll throw those in also. But in the meantime, we've got a couple of those.
If we can wangle them.
Well, yes, I'm not wangling anyone except for my wife. And we'll have some... we'll have a little bit of a discussion since we're wrapping up Blue Shout, talking about song choice for performances and competitions, and maybe a little bit of a DJ perspective on the whole thing. And we'll wrap it up with some feedback. Just a reminder, if you do have something to say to us, if you like or don't like my horrible jokes, feel free to send in your comments to info@confessingtheblues.com or give us a call. We definitely love to get our phone calls at 60-THE-BLUES. That's 608-432-5837.
If our puns cause you to die inside, we'd love to hear it. If for no other reason than to appreciate the suffering we're causing.
You know, there is a lot to be said for Schadenfreude. Yeah.
Hey, I just wanted to mention the last month I'd talked about that I had another event that I was going to be appearing at. Starting to get that coming together for me. That's going to be in July in Washington, D.C. at Red Hot Blues and Barbecue, July 16th to 18th. I'm going to be DJing with Devona Cartier, Mike Leggett, Dwayne Grover, Corey Bright, and Mike Marcotte. There's going to be several bands there. It's relatively cheap. Registration opens the 25th of May. I hope to see some of you guys there.
All right. We'll start off this month talking about Lena Horne, and we got a phone call from Damon. If you don't know Damon Stone, he was the one that Kate Bramley Moore managed to wangle out to Sweden.
I don't think any wangling happened there. No, that would be inappropriate.
But here's Damon.
Hey, this is Damon Stone. I was just calling because, as I'm sure you guys probably already know, we lost a great jazz and blues legend, amongst many other talents that she had in Lena Horne this month. I was hoping that you guys would do a little bit of a feature on her, just a moment or two, and maybe play Stormy Weather for me. All right, that's it. Thank you.
All right, Damon, thanks for calling in. We'll definitely spend a minute talking about Lena Horne.
Yeah, and then and all I can hear in Damon talking is just ding 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 goes the trolley in the background. It's
well, you know what? We're kind of a little bit of we do beg a little bit for the phone calls, so I guess it's hard to complain too much that people are calling us, even if they're calling us from inside a train station.
I'll take it any way I can get it. It's like my laughs.
So Lena Horne. Lena Horne grew up in New York City, and she was a dancer. She was a movie star, a stage and nightclub performer, and basically very strongly involved with civil rights and anything, stage and screen related for most of her life. So she grew up in New York City. She joined the chorus line at the Cotton Club at age 16. That's right, the Cotton Club. She toured with Noble Sissle in the 30s. She toured with Charlie Barnett in the early 40s and Billy Eckstine in the mid 40s. In 42, she joined MGM as the first Black performer to sign a long-term contract with a major Hollywood studio. So, she's groundbreaking.
Got the change of a nickel. Ain't got no bounce in my shoes. Ain't got no fancy to tickle. I ain't got nothing but the blues. Ain't got no coffee that's perking. Ain't got no...
So in 1943, she recorded the song that made her famous, Stormy Weather, and that's the title track to the movie of the same name. And I promise, Damon, we'll get to that in just a second. I think it's interesting because if there was anyone affected by racism in America, it was Lena Horne. She was deliberately not considered for starring roles despite her long-term contract, because it would have been impossible to edit her out for the theaters that wouldn't show motion pictures containing African Americans. I mean,
there's nothing else
seriously.
to say about that. There's nothing else to say about that.
Most of the roles that she ended up having in film were limited to musical segments that had very little bearing on the plot, so they could just edit them out.
What you say? Can I talk to my brown? A storm last night blowed the wires all down. Tell me how long will I have to wait? Oh, won't you tell me now? Why do you hesitate?
She actually lost a role in Showboat in 1951 because the production code banned interracial relationships on film. Which as someone who grew up after the civil rights movement, I have a hard time understanding that, and at the same time, to go back and read this absolutely horrifies me.
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine.
Yeah, it's
our society,
especially
that way.
considering that. I mean, being frank, we're both white. I mean, in a way, this is almost, and partially it's just the way that I grew up. I mean, this is almost gibberish to me, just because it's in a world today. Yeah, and I'm just saying in a world today where we've by no means have completely stamped out racism. I mean, or any other sort of discrimination. I mean, it's really hard to see that sort of institutionalization of it.
And the thing was, that really started to wear on her, because in the 50s, she left Hollywood and went on to pursue her nightclub acts. She headlined the Sands, the Waldorf Astoria, Coconut Grove, and she was on repeatedly the TV variety shows. So we're talking like Ed Sullivan and the Dean Martin Show.
St. Louis woman with all her diamond rings stole that man of mine by her apron string. If it wasn't for powder and her store-bought hair, that man I love wouldn't have gone nowhere. I've got the St. Louis blues.
Most of the songs that we're playing in this feature are from that time period. There's a lot more about Lena. It's really you almost can't summarize her life, and I've done as good a job as I can with respect to what we talk about on the show. But kind of in a very brief summary, Lena Horne won 8 Grammys, appeared in 22 films, and released over 30 albums. She was a driving force in the American Civil Rights Movement, and she was one of the singers that defined the African American presence in popular music. And this is the song that made her famous, Stormy Weather.
Since my man and I ain't together, keeps raining all the time.
So the tracks that we played, I mean, other than Stormy Weather, which, you know, it's not something that I would play for a dance floor, or I don't know that I'd really want to hear it on a dance floor. The other tracks that I picked out actually took me quite a while to find. The places that Lena Horne was performing, like the Sands or the Waldorf Astoria, these are not jukes, and these are not barrel houses. These are not, you know, places where the average person was going. This was, you were dressing up, you were getting fancy. These were nightclubs. These were high class places.
Right. And she very much followed the transition of the big bands from dance halls, and that sort of venue to basically the casinos, places like that, and then from there to the lounges. And she adapted throughout her career to fit into each of those, and you know, it succeeded each step of the way.
And the songs that we picked, like I Ain't Got Nothing But the Blues or St. Louis Blues, these are tracks that are very common on the stage. And it's interesting because we'll actually tie this in a little bit later in the program with our juke versus ballroom, because I think this is the perfect example of the differentiation of music and expectation for bringing blues into a ballroom versus the origin of blues in the juke. So, you know, Lena, thank you for everything, and you'll definitely be missed.
Yeah, thank you for helping make jazz and blues stand up over time. That's really what artists like that do. They basically take music and make it iconic. So moving on, Keith and I both have some new music we want to introduce you all this week. Hopefully you guys will go and take some time to appreciate what Lena Horne brought to the table, but we have some other material as well we want to share. The first song I'd like to introduce y'all is by Jelly Roll Morton. If you've read a little bit about Jelly Roll Morton, or you know, seen any of his like the Ken Burns jazz documentary, the man was a bit of an arrogant sumbitch. I mean, he really had an ego about him, and it showed in his life because he was stabbed and attacked multiple times in bars and places like that.
No, wait, aren't most of the people we talk about people who've been attacked and stabbed multiple times or shot in the street? Or
well, yes, which kind of just just ties him into the rest of it.
Okay,
yeah.
Just checking.
He started up playing it with playing piano, kind of like evolving out of ragtime, and basically migrated over to barrel house and really helped build some of the foundations of jazz. He was one of the early composers. Wrote some amazing songs that you'll hear other artists put out over and over and over again. The song that I picked for you guys to hear is his version of New Orleans Bump, which, if you pay attention to the competitions and performances, this has been done before. You've probably heard it, but you may not have heard the original. Go ahead and check this out. All right, so the version of that song, if you've heard any other versions, it's just really loose. It's a real celebration of what early jazz and blues was. I mean, it wasn't so tight that you couldn't tell the musicians had some real, you know, they had their own personality that came into the music, and it's beautiful.
But I mean, at the same time, what you're saying in that the music was loose is not that the musicians were not
not at all,
or that they were sloppy. Because I think there's a tendency, and you hear this in bars, is that a lot of people think that the blues is something that is very easy to play. It's got a very simple structure, and you hear a lot of, in my opinion, very mediocre blues from a lot of musicians today, because they're mistakenly assuming that it is easy and it's simple, but it's certainly not easy. And the musicians that we come back to time and time again are all masters. They're masters of their instruments, and they're masters of the style. And that's something that I feel like, you know, if you go out to a bar today, finding that is a lot harder than, you know, finding someone who can play the right chord progression.
And in this case, what you're hearing is not just a performance. You're hearing a freshly composed piece. And I mean, this is the guy who wrote King Porter's Stomp. He got what, you know, little bit of money that he got out of the song when he originally wrote it. But I mean, Benny Goodman and Fletcher Henderson and others, everybody performed King Porter's Stomp. Everybody still performs King Porter's Stomp if they're aspiring to play music in this style. And it's, you know, again, iconic. And this is one of the icons of early jazz and blues. So speaking of relations with icons and iconic music, our next artist is not a name you're going to recognize easily, unless you're paying attention. Johnny Shines. Johnny Shines isn't the more recognized member of this duo. He had a meeting with Robert Johnson in the 30s and started touring with him in 1935 until 1937. Johnny Shines had a really neat life. I mean, he's one of the guys that shows that perseverance and pays off. Basically shows that that ability sometimes just stands out. I mean, he recorded until 1941, or he just toured until 1941, and then just worked for a few years until after the war. He started trying to record. Never got, he'd record and then it wouldn't get released. And record and it wouldn't get released. And finally he just said, forget it. Sold everything he had for music and just went back to doing construction work. And so he just, and then in 1966.
Did he get stabbed?
No, he didn't. He was not stabbed. Actually,
Okay.
This is a different kind of torture. Instead of being, stabbed, shot, or otherwise left in the street to die. Somebody in 1966, Vanguard Records actually went and found him and had him record for a collection called a collection that they'd put together called Chicago the Blues Today. And I took the time to listen to that 3-disc set, and am very bitter that A, it's not on eMusic, B, it's not easily findable, and I need to go find it, because it's all Junior Wells, Walter Horton, and Johnny Shines, and guys like that.
Let me tell you how this is going to work, Jonathan. As soon as you find that album, within 2 months, it will show up on eMusic.
Oh yeah, I know.
That's how it's worked with me for everything that I've had to go out of my way to dig up on CD. Is within 2 months or half a year. It's before I have a chance to actually sit down and really listen to it. It shows up on eMusic.
Well, let me put it this way: the damn thing's not even on Amazon. Like,
seriously?
I looked on Amazon. The only way it's on Amazon is on download. The CDs aren't able to be.
Oh, you can't even get the CDs.
That's what I didn't see them.
God.
Maybe I'm an idiot and I don't know how to use Amazon very well. But so anyway, back to what we're talking about here. After those 1966 recordings, he really found notoriety again, and he was touring up through the 70s, and through up until about 1980. He suffered a stroke and didn't really tour very much anymore. I mean, he toured with Robert Johnson's stepson. I mean, Robert Lockwood Jr., another guy that I'm a big fan of. The song that I want y'all to hear is off of the album Back to the Country. It's actually the last album he did. Go ahead and check this out.
Way down on Shady Grove, oh, that's where they killed my baby. A long, long time ago.
that one just that's got a nice little slow burn to it. Like that's definitely a later in the evening, darker room kind of song.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Absolutely.
You can hear where, and it's interesting. The title of the album is Back to the Country. You can really hear in the music where that kind of thing would get played. It's definitely, got a lot of Delta blues influence to it.
Well, yeah. I mean, that album is just Johnny Shines on guitar and Snooky Pryor on harmonica. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. There's nothing else. There's not a drummer to be found. There's no bass player, nothing. It's just those two guys, and it's really awesome.
Yep. Speaking of Delta blues, and even another Robert Johnson connection, the next song I want to feature is called "Standing at the Crossroads," which is that actually my mind is going blank right now. Is that the name of the Robert Johnson song, or is he alluding to Robert Johnson with the title? I can't remember if the title is directly the same.
I can't remember if it was just "Standing at the Crossroads" or just "Crossroads."
Crossroads Blues, or there's a lot of reference to Crossroads in blues music. Most of it is referring to the story about Robert Johnson selling his soul to the devil to learn how to play guitar. Because apparently he really sucked to start off with, and then vanished for a little while and came back and blew everybody's mind.
He must have been terrible.
Terrible. At any rate, the artist I have for you is one of the Delta players who never did leave. A lot of the Delta players we talk about eventually left the Delta, and they came up through Memphis or to Chicago, or they went to the West Coast, or they came to Texas. James Son Thomas is one of the artists who actually stayed in Mississippi for basically his entire life. So James Thomas grew up on a farm in Mississippi. He played juke joints and barrel houses, and then he started recording in the late 60s. So he came during the folk blues revival in the late 60s. They kind of dug him up, and that was when he started recording. He actually appeared in several of the Delta blues style films of that time, like in the early 70s. He was in the film Delta blues singer James Sonny Ford Thomas and Give My Poor Heart Ease, Mississippi Delta Bluesmen. And there was a short called Mississippi Delta Blues that was 1974. And then he also kind of did the festival circuit in the 70s and 80s. The interesting thing about this was that Son Thomas wasn't known mostly for his music. He was mostly known as a folk artist for sculptures made from clay that he dug out of the banks of the Yazoo River. And his sculptures were often skulls, mirroring his job as a gravedigger. So this guy was a gravedigger. If there's anyone, I guess, who can sing the blues, it's a gravedigger. But he kind of kept that.
He kind of fits into the field. I mean, somebody's got to bury all the guys who get shot, stabbed, so on. I mean, may as well be another blues man.
Absolutely. So the song I've got is Standing at the Crossroads. It's by James Son Thomas. Check it out.
Standing at the crossroads with my head hung down and crying, crying about my baby. She'll be back home someday. Write me one letter.
So I went and looked during the song, and the Robert Johnson song is Crossroad Blues. It is slightly different, so it's this was a reinterpretation of that, but it still goes back to
everybody's done a reinterpretation of the song, and which is fine.
Yeah.
But
they're all talking about Robert Johnson.
No, yes, they are all talking about Robert Johnson or themselves, because they've all sold their souls at the crossroads.
Now that was off the discs Black and Blue, the same people who do the.
What don't they do? They cover everybody. They have the most amazing collections of old jazz and blues guys.
This is off the Blues Reference, which is a little bit different in style and in lineup, because I think all the definitive ones had Jay McShann on piano. I think they just set him down at the piano and just started bringing people through the door.
It's like, Jay, you sit here, cigarettes, whiskey, just don't move. Just play.
All right, so the next song I wanted to feature is also off the Discs Black and Blue label, and it's also off of Blues Reference, and it's by Cousin Joe. Now, I started reading about this guy because I'd never heard of him, and apparently that was my mistake, because he was around for pretty much forever. He was born in 1907 in New Orleans, and he was one of those people that came up with Sidney Bechet and Cab Calloway, and so basically he became an entertainer during the 1920s. He started off as a guy on the street, just another one of the people doing, just busking. Eventually he ended up in New York City during one of the migrations, and he wrote an autobiography, which there are not a huge amount of autobiographies of blues musicians. This one is unfortunately out of print. I saw on Amazon, because I'm better at Amazon than Jonathan is, and you could still get a couple of copies of it used, which I might have to do. But there is a good review of the autobiography on Satchmo.com. So I'm actually just going to read this excerpt. I kind of rearranged it to make more sense, but I think this is pretty awesome. So this is from Satchmo.com, and we'll put the link in the show notes. No one knows the blues and those experiences better than pleasant Cousin Joe Joseph, noted New Orleans bluesman. In this lively autobiography, Cousin Joe takes us on a journey through his life and career. At various times, he associated with Cab Calloway, Billie Holiday, and Leonard Feather. He shared billings with Cleanhead Vinson, Clark Terry, Dizzy Gillespie, Ella Fitzgerald, Nina Simone, and B.B. King. He toured or recorded with Muddy Waters, Gatemouth Brown, Jimmy Dawkins, Earl Bostic, Sidney Bechet, Danny Barker, and many others. As Cousin Joe tells us what it was like growing up on a rice plantation, attending the Baptist church, and constantly scrapping for a living, we also learn how he developed as a musician, what the relationships were between the nightclub owners, patrons, and performers, and about his many dealings with the women who are ubiquitous in the blues scene and necessary to Joe's survival in it. Throughout Joe's story, anecdotes of performances, tours, shared lodgings, and card games provide intimate glimpses of such legendary blues figures as Billie Holiday and Muddy Waters, especially revealing in Joe's account of his successes and his difficulties on recent European tours. His candid remarks underscore the role of economic necessity in the performing musician's life and correct some prevailing stereotypes. So you have to understand, I read that because it's such a fantastic description, and I really I want to know more about this guy. And if you kind of have to, after listening to that, you just want to look him up. It's like, this dude is it's like the tell-all of the blues world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm totally interested in reading that as well. One of the things I caught when I was looking through some of the credits on the guys that he also played with Henry Gray, another fantastic New Orleans blues guy. I mean, this guy really played with anybody and everybody under the sun. And I have this mental image of him sitting down to cards with Billie Holiday and Muddy Waters, and this just being some kind of just horrible clash of personalities, and them laughing about it the whole time through. Just this sounds amazing.
Yep. So this is the song "Going Down Slow." It's a standard, so you've heard it, but check it out, Cousin Joe.
Oh Lord, if I never get well no more. Well, I know my health is failing me. And I know I'm going down slow. Please write my mother.
So as someone from New Orleans, I'm actually going to be spending time reading up on this, because I know this guy played with anybody who went through the region, and evidently everybody else in the country that he could get to come down for a while. I mean, it's not like New Orleans is a draw for people to come visit, right? I mean, nobody wants
beignets.
Nobody wants to go to New Orleans and spend time.
It's just the beignets.
Yeah, even the city's. I mean, I love
the
my home.
coffee,
The city's
Cafe
half a
LA.
city now, and it's still a fantastic place.
So Cousin Joe, the song was Going Down Slow. Great track. This album is also the blues reference. So really good stuff. Recorded later. That was recorded in the early 70s.
At some point, we're just gonna have to like do a selection of the best of discs black and blue, and then fight over what we call the best of what is obviously a ridiculous label.
Yep. So that track actually featured Jimmy Dawkins and Gatemouth Brown. So, they just went and found all the best musicians they could find and stuck them in a studio.
Yeah, and that's a French label. That's part of the
Yes.
beautiful part to me. It's like they went and rounded up all the guys that they could think of. Every jazz and blues musician that they could find. I think they recorded a lot of this back in the 60s. They're like, okay, are you busy? You got anything? No? Come here. Like, we need you to record before you die. It's like, I think that was their philosophy.
I think so. Speaking of musicians who are still around, actually, after last month, we've got a bonus track for you. I spoke with Chris Pistorino of the Blue Vipers of Brooklyn. They are a band who is making music today, and they're making music in the style that we really enjoy. And so I spoke to Chris and got permission to play a full track off the album Goodnight Harry, which is the album I did feature last month. We wanted to feature the full track. The song is called Let It Roll. It's a Jimmy Reed song originally. The original title, I think, is Baby What You Want Me to Do. I think I've heard every band that's played at a bar ever has done a cover of this song in some incarnation or another. It's here, take a listen. We've got the full track and Blue Vipers of Brooklyn. Let it roll.
You got me running, you got me hiding, you got me running, hiding, running the way you want to let it roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got me doing what you want, baby, baby, what you want me to do. I'm going up, I'm going down, I'm going up, down, down, up, and the way you want to let it roll. Yeah, yeah, yeah. You got me doing what you want, baby, baby, what you want me to do.
That's really great stuff. I have their earlier album, 40 Days and 40 Nights. I picked that up, I guess, a couple of years ago. And they've really come along. They're a fantastic band. I mean, and that song really is a staple of staples. Keith and I were talking about that during the song. It's one of those songs that everybody on the planet that you can imagine picks up and plays. But really, if you're listening to anything that sounds remotely like Chicago blues, it's written by Jimmy Reed or Willie Dixon. And yeah, I mean, that's just how it is.
So thanks again, Chris, for letting us play the track. The Blue Vipers are actually in the process of recording a third album, but I don't have a date on when that's going to be available yet. So as soon as I can find out any more information, like I said last month, they fall into my category of bands that play early blues with a modern sensibility that I really appreciate. So we'll be hearing more from them. I can pretty much guarantee it.
You say blues with a modern sensibility, and I'm picturing just the generic middle-aged white guy blues band at you're at every corner bar in the country, and that's just what I picture when you say that. And I'm like, no, these guys really don't have that same generic feel to them.
No, I'm referring, when I say modern sensibility, I mean, I talked about this, like I think I talked about this last month, that the way that they interpret the music, the way that they hear the older music makes and play it, it sounds like they grew up hearing the same music that I was hearing. And so there's no over pronunciation in the vocals like you hear in the early 20s stuff to sound, more proper.
Okay, that makes
none
sense.
of that. It just, the musical influences, the style of playing, the touch of the fingers on the sax, the style of keys, they're not innovating, but which is fine, but they're reinterpreting in a way that other people aren't. It's a reinterpretation.
And that I
really
absolutely
enjoy.
agree with. That I liked them when I picked up that album ways ago. I think I heard them on the Mr. Jesse show. Yes, I did.
All right. That was our new music for this month. So, we'll have some more for you next month. And, of course, we'll keep pulling e-music since,
that's what we do.
Yep. So last month we didn't really get the opportunity to talk about Blue Shout, even though it had consumed pretty much every waking moment of my life for about 6 months. Just because Jonathan and I weren't able to record together. So we wanted to take some time and kind of talk about it together this month and give you kind of a rundown. Actually, the rest of this show is kind of focused on stuff that happened, during and about Blue Shout. So let's just, let's get into it, because if you are a blues dancer, Blue Shout is kind of the premier event, and it kind of dictates what and where blues dance is going for the next year.
Yeah, it's like between that and Emerald City, coming up.
We're talking about events that are about 6 months apart. So we're
perfect. Yeah.
So even if we're just talking for the next 6 months, let's talk about that. The first thing I want to do is I wanted to give you guys a rundown of the bands that we had, because one of the mandates of Blue Shout as a traveling event is to really feature local music, and that's been the case, obviously in Chicago in 2009 and in St. Louis in 2007. The bands that and this year, the bands are always local bands of what I would consider, towards the top notch in the city. So on Friday night this year, we had Omar and the Howlers, and I wrote up a bio of them for the Blue Shout website, but Omar has been playing blues since he walked into a juke joint at the age of like 16, maybe even a little bit younger, and just he's been playing blues ever since. And he's got a discography of something like 20 albums. He's been an Austin staple since the 70s, and he was friends with Stevie Ray Vaughan. And I know I get in trouble, especially with Rachel Jordan for the way that I talk about modern Austin blues, and she gets on my case because she thinks that I don't like it. And what it comes down to is really a style issue with what I like to see in a dance floor, and not a quality of music issue. And so Omar was kind of a band that we brought in to really bring in that modern Austin sensibility of classic blues. So the direction that we gave Omar when he came in was to play classic blues in his, and give it his spin. And I think he did, for what we asked him to do, I think he did a really great job coming in and playing, 4,500 square foot ballroom with this, fantastic Chicago and Texas based blues music, playing it in a very modern Austin sensibility. And, this guy is playing with the names. He's playing with Luann Barton. He's playing with Jimmy Vaughn, who we've talked about. He's playing with James Cotton, who is in the Muddy Band. This guy is playing with fantastic musicians. He's got some fantastic music, and he's as he plays puts out more of his own CDs, he's really starting to bring in those classic songs onto his albums. I just wanted to give you guys a song to listen to. The name of the track is Dream Girl. It's off his most recent album called Big Town Playboy, and check it out.
Dream girl, I know your love for me is gone. Dream girl, I know your love for me is gone. If you love me, baby, you know you won't do nothing wrong. You ride around, baby.
So yeah, I was looking at the album cover again during the song, and he's got Gary Clark Jr., who's a modern blues superstar, Lazy Lester, who I think we talked about when we were talking about the Dial Tone record stuff. So he came in and I don't know what else to say. He's a fantastic guy to work with, and he played really solid music. So we wanted to make sure that if you didn't make it out to shout, that you at least got to hear it, and if you did make it out to shout, that you got to go and explore a little bit more of what Omar and the Howlers have in their catalog. So that was Friday.
They were solid Friday night. The Saturday night show was it was a different cup of tea there. It was it was the Asylum Street Spankers, which we talked about a month or two ago, I believe. I mentioned some.
We've talked about them a couple of times.
We can't really avoid them too much.
Another Austin band.
Another Austin band. But these guys really cover, well, not literally. Well, okay, they do cover, but I mean, they do a lot of different styles of music. They very much stick to kind of a roots, the roots of American music, and you could say. I mean, a lot of folk styling, a lot of blues influence, a lot of early jazz influence. I mean, if you listen to their full library, they cover the entire range of early music there, and they cover a lot of modern music too. I mean, their covers include, a short list includes the Beastie Boys, Black Flag, Prince, the Violent Femmes, Nirvana, Nine Inch Nails, Screamin' Jay Hawkins, Johnny Cash, yada 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 yada. List goes on.
Yeah, I mean, let's not. I mean, you guys know who the Spankers are. You've heard them. We've played them before. As far as the dancer thing went, they've been historically on the record as not playing for dancers, and so this was kind of a one of a kind. And they kind of
killed it. I mean, they killed it in a totally awesome, fantastic way. And I think that it made from what you and what your wife said, and from what the impressions I got from the band and what they were doing kind of like between sets and after the show, I mean, they were really digging on what was going on. And they really killed the crowd. I mean, a lot. And I'll be honest, there were some people who weren't all the way ready for some of the music that they heard from them. They weren't but again, this kind of comes down to what feedback you get when you talk about music. I mean, I've heard some of the feedback from you and from others, Keith, and I mean, and it's not even just about this band, but about others. Whatever band I've ever heard at any event ever, is going to be as follows. It will be all of the above. Too fast, too slow, too bluesy, too not bluesy, too jazzy, too everything. So, that being said, these guys put a fantastic show together, and they just destroyed it. So the version of the song we're going to play for y'all is "I Got My Mojo Working." Now, the version we're going to play is kind of, well, go ahead and listen to this, and then I'll tell you what we heard.
I've got a gypsy woman giving me advice. I've got some red hot tips. I'll have to keep on nice. I got my mojo working. Just won't work on you. Oh, I wanna love you so until I don't know what to do. I've got my...
All right, so you heard that, rich, awesome. They funked it up for the show, and they did. And they really just.
Too white to say that.
Yeah. Oh. But okay, so and that was something really awesome. I wasn't expecting it. Like the first time I heard the song start, I'm like, what are they doing? Wait, I don't like that. Wait, yeah, I really do. It was like, and then I was dancing with someone, Megan Besh. Yes,
You were dancing,
I was
Jonathan?
dancing with Megan Besh.
You were dancing?
Yes, I think I was dancing with Megan Besh,
Nice.
or was it Heather? I don't remember. Somebody. I was dancing with. I
either
can't
way,
remember who I was dancing with
winners
that
in my
particular
book.
song. It was really awesome, and it was. Yeah, they and I think they pretty much took the crowd, put them in their hand, and really owned them for the evening.
Now, there are a couple of YouTube videos from the evening that are up on the website. They are not, I think, songs that are necessarily ones you'll be familiar with, but what happened is Whammo, who's one of the other leaders of the band besides Christina Mars, was unable to make it to the show. He had a family situation come up and couldn't make it. So we brought in, or Christina brought in a guy named Jimmy Lee. I had never heard of him before. And this was a serious mistake on my part because he's awesome. And I just had no idea. And he's another Austin guy. And I'm like, how have you been here and I never see your name? I couldn't. So the first track on the YouTube is one of Jimmy Lee's songs where he led the band. And the second one is one of the Spanker songs where he's just kind of filling in on harp. So you can get an idea, but I will say right off the bat that the songs that are on YouTube were actually, in my opinion, not really representative of how freaking awesome they were. I actually feel they were kind of weaker songs.
Was there a video of the encore?
No, I've not seen a video of the encore, although there may be some on the official video, which I have yet to get my grubby little paws on.
Yeah,
and I've been trying to for the last 3 weeks.
Because I have to say this,
and
this is really where, like, it got it for me was because that is the point where you realize even just listening just on your own doesn't do credit to what Christina Mars does on stage. Because she attacks songs, and that's really a cool attitude to take. Because with her voice, it's just fantastic.
Well, I mean, start to finish, that's why the Spankers don't really go for dancers at their shows, and it's mostly because dancers want to be in the front. They want to be between the audience and the band, and because the style of music, being mostly acoustic, and the performance aspect of the music, having a bunch of people stomping around and flailing about, really takes away from it. And I will say that during the encore, the dancers rushed the stage. So there really wasn't dancing going on during the song. The encore was shaved.
We've discussed it.
We've, I think, touched on that, and we're gonna just move on and just say that if you weren't there, you may wonder why people would have rushed the stage for that, but it was an energy thing. It absolutely was an energy thing, and I think I've talked about before. There's something that you can only get in an interaction between musicians who are engaged with dancers and dancers who are engaged with musicians. And I will say that I was more impressed with the dancers at Blue Shout during the Spankers than I have ever been with dancers at a concert ever in my entire life. They applauded from the end of the very first song to through the encore as though, it was almost of the magnitude of like a Kiss performance of people just being raucous. So, and to hear dancers actually actively appreciate the band. I don't know how much of it was just my emails basically, telling people that they had to, or whether people just really took that on. But it was one of the most awesome and exciting experiences that I've had dealing with live music and dancers ever.
And they, like I said, they killed it. They absolutely killed it.
So that's our live music wrap up. I didn't actually make it to any of the classes. I'm sorry.
Neither did I. It's okay. I was busy watching the other things when I was actually there. I was working when I was there, and if I wasn't there, I was at your house watching Roy do jazz hands down the stairs when he woke up in the morning and things like that.
Oh, Roy. We'll actually hear from Roy in a little bit. I don't know. We'd love to hear your feedback. If you went to Blue Shout, if you had some comments about the music, the live music, especially, let us know what you think about this kind of stuff, because we could tell you what we think, and ultimately that means something, but we'd rather hear what you have to say, especially as we get started, or as I get started working on next year. In case you didn't know, and the reason that I'm saying this is, I'm on the Blue Shout board of directors as I'm actually the music director. So if you have something to say about the music, first of all, take a minute and make sure, if you're going to write in and complain about it, that you've done a little bit of research, because if you write in and say something like the band's played too much country music and not enough blues, I'm going to write you off, because there wasn't any country music. There was some country blues, but that's not country music. But, I actually am interested in hearing how you felt the bands interacted with the dancers and what you think, is appropriate for a dance. That's all. I'm done now.
Well, okay. Well, one of the things that we tried to do after Shout, we tried to do it during Shout, but that didn't happen
miserably.
No, that was mutual failure, because I was slow and didn't do much during the days. But it's not like, what I'm going to do, drag like people out of class and make them talk to us? No, that's not going to happen. But what we did was we asked some of the instructors and DJs about their picks for music. And we got a few responses. I know folks are kind of busy, and so we got just a few different responses from folks. So
yep, let's just jump into it. The way this is going to work is, I sent an email out to the Blue Shout instructors after the fact, asking them basically and DJs, and asking them to introduce themselves and pick a song that they're really crazy about right this moment. Could be when they're DJing, or when they use in class, or when they just really like, and go down and explain why they like it. And then we'll give you a cut of the song, just so that you can hear from people who aren't us, and who are also, making some waves in the scene about what's going on. So the people who wrote in this month, or phoned in for me, were Nell Hatley from Denver, Heidi Fight from San Francisco, and Heidi Fight. Well, Heidi Ho.
Thank you.
Yeah, I know. I was debating whether I wanted to say her last name at all, which is why it was a little stilted, because, Heidi's been around and has been part of the blues scene, has been leading the blues scene for so long that if you've been involved with blues to the point where you're actually listening to us, you probably know who she is. And of course, Roy Ridebeck from San Francisco. So I'm just going to go and run these down, and you guys could take a listen. We're not really going to comment on them, because the people who love the songs are going to comment on them for you, and check it out.
Hey everyone, this is Nell Hatley from Denver, Colorado, and I'm a dance instructor along with my partner Joe Demers. The artist that I'm really digging right now is a friend and dancer from Denver, Sean Morris. His band is The Crazy Days, crazy spelled with an I, and you can find them on MySpace and Facebook. And if you come to Denver for Mile High Blues, Sean plays a lot during the weekend. I've had the privilege of hearing Sean play live many times, and I really love his voice. It's so good. And he's so creative while playing, from changing things up with funny lyrics to recording his own bass rhythm with a mic attached to his guitar case and then looping it back to play over the top of. And he even sang an awesome bluesy version of Happy Birthday for me last year. It was so nice. Thanks, Sean. One song in particular that I really love is Further On Down the Road. And what I enjoy most about the song is that it has that live, raw recording sound to it. And I can just picture him singing there when I hear it. I love it so much, in fact, that Joe and I have started choreographing a routine to it. So hopefully you'll get to see our interpretation of the song with Sean playing along with us. So here are The Crazy Days with Further On Down the Road.
Don't you want to get up and go further on down the road? The car is packed, the house is sold. Further on down the road. Follow the path of the setting sun. Further on down the road. We might just find how the West was won. Further on down the road. Further on down the road. We won't be bought and we won't be sold. Sure as hell won't do what we're told. We'll go further on down the road.
Hi, this is Heidi Veit from San Francisco, California. I teach weekly blues dance classes in San Francisco and weekend blues dance workshops all over the world. A song that I'm really into right now is I'll Pity the Fool by Bobby Blue Bland. I like it because it has a basic rhythm that even beginners can hear quite clearly to dance to, but it has many layers with call and response and variation and intensity that no matter how advanced a dancer you are, you'll get something out of it new every time. Thanks for listening.
I said I pity the fool that falls in love with you and expect you to be true. Oh, I pity the fool. Look at the people. I know you wonder what they're doing. They're just standing there watching you make a fool.
Hi, this is Roy Rideback. I'm a DJ from San Francisco, California. The song I selected for this edition of the podcast, Blues Podcast, is Charlie Beatty doing the song Rain. I really like DJing this song because it has a nice little twist to the blues. It's still a blues song, but it sounds a bit different, and dancers really respond to it very well. So I hope you enjoy. Bye.
I laid in my bed this morning, listening to the raindrops fall, and I know it rained all night long, babe. Girl, 'cause I never slept at all. Sometimes I think it's really over.
All right. Well, thank you, Nell, Heidi, and Roy, for taking the time to send us some tracks. Definitely appreciate it. Hopefully the rest of our Blue Shot instructors will have some time to call in the next month. Next month is kind of my cutoff for this year's Blue Shot. So if they don't make it in next month, I will actually track them down next year with the tape recorder, and we will, maybe we could Clockwork Orange strap them to a chair and make them pick something.
Just so you said that, I pictured Boroff strapped down
and with drops in his eyes, and still just going meh, meh.
So anyway, we'll hopefully have some more for you next month, but maybe not. And if not, we'll get it next time.
Mm. All right. Well, Keith and I both have had things to say about Shout, but mostly that we just had a great time. Everything went well. Keith's pretty happy none of the buildings burned down while people
nothing
were inside
nothing
them.
caught on fire. I was really happy about that, because the Fed, if you've ever been there, is a really old building, and there is some wiring in there that is questionable. So I am glad that nothing caught on fire.
Yeah, but the place is great, and it's perfect for dances. I mean, really, it's
for 300 people. Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, for anything up to I mean, sure, you can't cram 1,000 people in there, but almost any reasonable sized event, the only way it would suck is if you had 30 people, like my dances. If you tried to cram like 20 or 30 people into that room and then expect them to just enjoy the space, they'd be like, this is really weird. It's just awkward. But any reasonable,
that's actually a different discussion about the criteria that dancers ask for in terms of a dance space, but we'll talk about that some other time.
Yeah.
Before I get started.
Understood.
I'm saving it this month. I got other stuff to talk about.
Well, from my perspective, I attended Shout very much with the perspective of hearing music and wanting to just kind of take that in and DJ and put that out and put it out there for everyone to hear. I really enjoyed listening to everybody that DJ'd. The bands both did a lot for me. One of my tasks was to DJ some of the prelims, specifically the ballroom and prelims. Now, this is an interesting challenge to me because I'd never DJ'd competition before. And there was a lot of discussion I had with Damon, with Tina, with other people about what the hell do I do?
And I mean, the relevance there being that Damon is kind of the overlord of competition and competition style, and Tina was our comp director this year. Just for those of you who don't understand why they're relevant for this.
But there was a lot of discussion through the weekend over some of the ways that the music that we present in competitions and also I think in performances affects basically everyone. I mean, where it's one of those things where people pick songs and you're like, I want to, would be a great performance. And it's like, well, it's not that the song's bad, but there's issues with it. And there was a lot of that comes from a performance aspect. When it comes to competition, it's like, well, does this work? Is this challenging? Is this the right style? And there was a lot of back and forth about that all weekend long. That was being challenged from multiple angles. So we really wanted to kind of talk about what competitions meant for us in music, because like it or not, I mean, believe it or not, we look at what people play at dances and what we play at dances, and it really affects what we play in the future and what people request in the future and is expected at dances. I mean,
you mean the competitions?
I mean,
look to the
comps and performances. Comps and performances. Yeah. Because if you have a memorable finals in a competition, that song sticks. It gets played on YouTube 1 million times, or a few hundred times, whatever. It gets played on YouTube enough that people go, okay, I want to hear that, and I want to dance to it. I mean,
well, that was the Love Rears Its Ugly Head, the Living Color track that Steven played in 2007. It's really not a blues track by any means, but man, because that song made an appearance and an impact at a competition, and it was danced really well. This was 2007 in St. Louis, and it was Mike Leneville, who is from Austin and is in New York now, and Brenda Russell, and they danced that, and it just got such a great response that all of a sudden that song started showing up at dances, despite the fact that it really had no business ever being played on social floor. So there is that definite crossover from competition and performance into the social floor.
And yet when people hear the music in competition or in performance, they want to dance to it. I mean, which is understandable, because Keith and I were discussing this. What happens when you see a performance, or when you see the top competitors in any level of competition, or in any part of the competition, and you have an audience? What's the goal here? And it's not that you necessarily want to make the people in the audience dance, obviously, because they're your audience. But what you do want is to have them, you don't want them to say, I just want to dance. You want them to say, I want to do that. I want to do what they are doing. And it's great because it gives people goals to an extent. It gives them something to shoot for with how they dance. It gives us as DJ types and people who give you guys music something to work with. It gives us guidelines. It gives us basically information on what you want. And I think that's a big boon to us.
I mean, the idea being that if someone is performing at a blues dance, or even at a swing dance, at one of our social dance events, if someone is performing, there are basically two reasons that people perform. One is, like, you have say a performance team, and they're competing they're competing with a choreographed routine. So it's either to compete or it's to inspire. And the purpose of performances at Blues Shout is to allow dancers to inspire the rest of the people at the event, people who are taking blues in directions that you may not see on a social floor. I think Joe and Nell are fantastic at doing this kind of thing, at really inspiring people to want to get up and dance and to learn new things, and just to be, I think the assumption with performances, and even to a smaller, although pretty significant effect with competitions, I think there's this underlying assumption from blues dancers, especially, that there is not an interaction, that people are getting up and they're going to do their stuff and we're just going to watch. And I'm, as someone who puts on an event that's competition and performance focused, and as someone who's been involved with other performance and competition events, or just competition events like the Lone Star Championships, it's actually really, it's almost insulting to the people who've chosen to perform or chosen to compete to be viewed as just people getting up as actors, because that's not what's going on here. This is not like a Michael and Evita Singing in the Rain routine, where they actually are stage performers doing a dance performance. These are social dancers who are trying to inspire and engage their audience in a way that there's actually a give and take, just like like we want to see with a band. And, this is a pet peeve of mine, is to watch the same people who, when there's a Lindy Hop performance, will be, stomping and cheering and throwing hats and shoes. As soon as the blues song comes on, there's silence.
That partly comes from when we talk about musically, I mean, there has to be some real engagement by the audience, with the performers. And they have to, nobody wants to perform to a dead room. Nobody wants to dance in front of a dead room.
Yeah. Yes, musically, but there also needs to, blues dancers. I'm actually, this is something that really, really upsets me and really pisses me off. So I'm going to rant for just a second, mostly for ratings, but that's okay. No, blues dancers need to get it out of their heads that blues is not appropriate for performance or competition. It absolutely is. And if you think it's not, you're wrong, and you need to go back and look at what blues dance really is. Here's why. Blues started off as a social dance in a bar room. If you can walk into a bar room and tell me that when you get on the dance floor, you are not performing or showing off, you're out of your freaking mind. You're just wrong. The point of going into a bar and dancing is to compete for the attention of other people in the room. Whether that's to take them home, or whether it's so you can get your next dance, or whether it's for social status, the root of this dance, the root of blues, the root of Lindy Hop, the root of all of these dances is in social competition. It's in cutting. It's in trying to show up other people on the dance floor. Period. So if you think that blues is not a competition-based dance, you're wrong, and you need to get over it.
The challenge here isn't necessarily, in my mind, whether it is a competition-based dance. I agree with the statement that all dance is competition. I wonder sometimes about making dance, I mean, competitive in a lot of ways. And this is any dance, because it's extremely subjective, and I am a little anal retentive, so I want points and I want there to be a score, and I want to save the princess and win the game, and dance doesn't offer that up. If you were offered style points in playing, insert shoot 'em up video game here, this would be really weird, but it doesn't
I'm
work
sorry,
that
Jonathan,
way.
but your dance partner is in another castle.
My dog. It's difficult for me to really effectively do that, but from my perspective, what I can look at is seeing what we provide, and really there has to be some faith to the dance in this, or to the style of music that we're talking about. I mean, if you're doing a blues competition and you're competing to any of the notorious bands we mentioned several months ago, then you are fail. You have missed the point, and again, that there should be auto loss.
Are you talking about me there, Jonathan? Did you forget?
No. Okay, so Friday night, if for those of you that weren't at Blues Shout,
people missed the point, but let's talk about it.
Yeah, Keith. So there's the instructor, Jack and Jill. So everybody goes and picks a partner, and Keith decides to give each couple. They get what did they get? They got
two
like
songs.
A blues
the first
song.
One was a blues
two
song
songs
picked by Steven.
One was blues. The second song was either
it was your choice.
It was 90s. It was 90s Blues Room
2004
or hip hop,
old school hip hop,
right?
and old school.
That's right. Blues Room 2004 hip hop. Okay, so so items of note to be collected here. 1, Josh Boroff doing a body roll, which I don't know that was that was cried out for by multiple people. 2, and I saw this coming from a mile away as I'm watching Jerry and Heidi sit at the end of the line, go just talking, and like they're like whispering to each other. And I'm like, oh, this is gonna be good, because I know what happens when you give Jerry Warwick about 5 minutes to plan something. So, I mean, giving Jerry any amount of time to plan, he comes up with something that will make you cry, and that's what happened, because they picked. What was it? They picked Blues Room 2004. You gave them
the
Portishead.
track.
Yeah. By the way, the entire list of songs from Blues Room 2004 were all of the songs that he and I had spent an entire episode of this podcast ripping. All of them. I looked at your list. Just because you didn't get to it doesn't mean I know you weren't ready to play it.
Well, please, You Can't Touch This didn't make it out, but that was on the list too, and that wasn't a.
Oh no, that totally did make it out.
You're right. It was the vanilla. It was Ice Ice Baby that I thought about playing and left off. Anyway, before this becomes just a little bit of too much rambling, check out we'll post a link to it in the show notes.
There's a video.
Understand that the motivation behind this was twofold. One, it's to point out that this is actually supposed to be fun, and 2, it's to kind of show off how far we've all come by putting it in stark contrast to the music that we're playing for blues dancers today, which is what Steven played. So Steven played a blues song, and then I played something completely ridiculous and fun. The point of this was not to revive Blues Room 2004 at a blues dance. It was just to point out that this is what we used to do, and we all acknowledge that, and we've moved on. So let's move on.
Yeah. Yeah, and I very much got that, and I was really, but I was really missed. But you need to see the video, because I can't even possibly describe what Jerry and Heidi did on that dance floor. It was awesome. It was every traumatic memory for people in one moment when they look back. It's every moment of shame.
It was awesome.
and it was awesome. It was fantastic. So the actual competitions later were DJed by all the DJs. Everybody contributed at some point, I believe. And there was a lot of discussion about how do we discriminate musically, because there's two different styles of comp there. There's jukin and ballroomin'. Now, dance, in the essence of dance style, there's some difference in movement. If you take the time to pay attention, and I'll say this again, I keep saying this. If you pay attention to the dancing and if you pay attention to the music, it's there. I mean, now you can note the differences in how you would imagine a body responding to the music. If it's
well, I've actually got an email into Damon about what because he gave, unfortunately, like this description didn't make it to the DJs. The DJs had a different description of the difference. The instructions he gave to the judges about what the judges were looking for movement wise for jukin versus ballroom, and I think are actually really relevant from a musical standpoint. I've got an email into Damon, and hopefully we'll get that back and we can revisit this next month.
Yeah.
But anyway,
this will continue in future months. But but there was a lot of discussion back and forth between teachers and DJs, and teachers and teachers about what makes up this style. And there was and in some ways it was almost oversimplified. To what makes up, at one point I think that the raw description of what makes up ballroomin' is basically, if it has horns, it's ballroomin'. That was the raw, simple point of it. If it has guitar, it's jukin'. Like, that's like, this is your, this is not actually,
it's a smart ass simplification is what it is.
It is that. It's not meant to be the pure and final truth. Right. We're sitting and talking about this, and we're coming up with different examples and putting different sounds together and start to kind of try to build up some more understanding of this. Now, we have a few examples we want to present to y'all of what Keith and I kind of take and understand as different examples of the different styles. The first one we're going to offer up is for ballroomin', and this is Sidney Bechet's The Mooch. You've heard this song. We've probably played it before, but we're going to do it again to make a point. So here's the song. So Keith and I discussed that, and it's, in my mind, that song, or that style, I should say, is really about long lines, drawn out movement. It's not as down as, and I say down, like actually like the direction down, not like some sort of, colloquial term. It's not as down as what you'd hear,
like emotional, like bluesy.
So moving on. Stab you. It's not as down as you'd hear in other parts of this music. So it really typifies what judges are looking for and what we as DJs want to put out there. It's and it's much more typified in big band, small jazz combo, and New Orleans jazz. That's really what ballroomin' is in my mind. I mean, if we're gonna typify it, it's those three styles of music. To say it is only those, it is exclusive to those three styles of music is not true. And to say that those three styles of music only play ballroomin' style of music, it's also not true. Which is why we're all confused as hell sometimes trying to make these divisions here. So there's that. The second song that we wanted to offer up is something that's a little more on the lines of jukin', and that's John Lee Hooker.
By a little more, you mean this is, if this doesn't ring the jukin' bell, you need to recalibrate to this right now.
The jukin' bell.
Ever since, baby, you was 5 years old. I was 6 years old, baby. We was going to school together, baby. I was a natural born fool for you, baby. I declare, baby. Oh, yeah. I'm a fool for you, baby. I don't care, baby.
What we're hearing there is a really down and, we keep saying this, down and dirty kind of style. It's gritty. It's beautiful. I mean, John Lee Hooker makes fantastic music. Great. It's fantastic stuff. It's not choppy, but it's a little more cut. It doesn't produce those same kind of lines. You really want to be a little closer. It's not as upright sounding, if that makes sense. And you're going to hear that with Chicago blues. Yeah, you get the idea. Anything. I mean, in Chicago blues, you're going to hear that, and a lot of the stuff out of Memphis. A lot of the Texas stuff kind of sounds that way too.
The thing is that this all falls apart right around 1948, because that's when you start to see in music. Well, first of all, you start to see jump blues, which is really confusing. But you move from, and let's take it back to the name. This is really, I think we sometimes over intellectualize because we're trying to understand.
Me over intellectualize?
Well, no, I don't mean just you. I mean the scene in general, as we try and figure this out. This ballroom versus juke, and how do we dance? Ballrooming, which comes from Savoy ballrooming, it was dancing done to blues music played at the Savoy Ballroom. And if you don't know, the Savoy Ballroom required a jacket. I mean, this was, you dressed up. This was not a place where you would get down and dirty with your lady. This is not the kind of place. This was a very proper establishment. And, thinking social conventions wise, a very proper place. And such, the bands that were playing at the Savoy, who was playing at the Savoy? Count Basie,
Chick Webb,
Chick Webb. Chick Webb was the house band there for a long time. Right. And if you look into swing music, you can look into the history of the Savoy Ballroom. But what happens is we tend to think with our Lindy Hop hats on that the only music that ever got played at the Savoy was Lindy Hop music. And it's absolutely untrue. They played Latin music. They played, these blues pieces. They played the jazz that we will stretch out and make into ballrooming.
Right.
The bands playing there were big bands. Period. Jukin comes from a juke. You've got a piano, maybe. You've got a guy with a guitar. You've got stringed instruments.
Guitar, mandolin, banjo,
maybe.
Harmonica. Yeah, probably not as many horns. Because it's
you got a guy stomping his foot along as accompaniment, or hitting the body of the guitar,
or hitting a box, whatever,
or hitting a box.
That's the sound.
Gut bucket bass. Right.
And this is where people are again. Where, like Keith had said before, this is about social competition, social interaction, social attention. So you get a little more. And this is not coat and tie. This is I'm off work. And you go to dance.
Right.
I mean, that kind of attitude, maybe not. But anyway, so.
And the reason I say this all fell apart in the 50s is that we talked about this before, was as people came out of the fields and out of the rural areas into the cities, you had this combination of the big band music with the rural music, and you had jump blues, and you had this the timbre of what the music was changed. Mm-hmm. And so when we talk about ballroomin' versus jukin', we're talking about, ballroomin' pretty much doesn't exist today. Jukin' still does, but we're talking about a change in the style of music into the 50s. And that's one of the reasons why, because I think we play a lot of music from the 50s and beyond. Yeah. We tend to gravitate towards that just because of the fidelity issue. But I wonder, if that's one of the reasons why we're having a hard time understanding this.
And I think that is a part of it. It's harder to find examples of, that especially novel examples. I mean, we look at Lincoln Center putting Ellington covers out that are real easy to do. But there aren't as many examples of it. I mean, again, when we reach into small combo jazz, you can catch it there, but again, it comes down to audience engagement, because it's not always going to get the reaction you want. I mean, I love me some Ray Brown, but I mean, some of his music just isn't going to grab an audience and make them really want to pay attention to what's going on. So with this divergence in mind, we're going to play something that's from right around that period. I picked a Louis Jordan track for this called "Slow Down." Listen to this, and I'll fill you in on what our reactions were to it.
Slow your speed way down. You riding too high, baby. You burning up the town. Slow down, slow down. Yeah, you know you're doing wrong. The speed you traveling, baby. Ooh, hey, you know you can't last long. I bought you a brand new car.
Okay, so that song is the perfect example of, huh? Like what? Like it's not that it's a bad song. I love it. It's a great song. It does so many different things and does them pretty well that when we're trying to create these sort of delineations between music and style, this falls right in the middle of it. It doesn't neatly fall into this dichotomy we've created, and there's a lot of music that falls into that. Now, this kind of puts what is the DJ's duty in this when dealing with competition or performance? Well, competition, it should be involved in performance. We'll get to that in a minute. But with competition, it's a matter of our duty being, okay, we need to pick prime examples of one or the other. But the fact is that when we're actually playing music for a dance floor, there's stuff that you can really do. What can't you do to that song? I mean, what element of that song, really, breaks it? I mean, you can do the same kind of movements you could do to the mooch. I mean, it's really there. I mean, you've got the horns that kind of you can drag out movements to, but Louis singing, and you can catch his guitar in there that puts that same kind of chop into it, that same kind of that cut, that sound that you can abbreviate your movements to. So, what is it? And there's no good answer to it, because the reality is that musicians are not creating music with this intent in mind. They're not putting this music out there for this sort of clear delineation. They're just putting songs out there, and it's how dancers interpret it that kind of makes this whole thing go around.
Yeah, there's another issue, and that's right now the vast majority of blues styles being taught on a regular basis are jukin styles. And it's because we don't have a lot of background information on ballroomin', and there are not a lot of people teaching it. There are only a couple of people who are actually teaching, and it's not as prevalent today as it was a couple of years ago. I'm not sure why that is. It might just be a natural function of the fact that the music that is grabbing people on the dance floor is, especially as we bring in a new generation of blues dancers who don't come from a Lindy Hop background, where they're used to a jump blues song. Louis Jordan, you've been listening to Louis Jordan at your Lindy Hop dances for the last 10
other
years.
False dichotomy. Oh, Louis Jordan.
Right.
Louis Jordan's a Lindy Hop artist. Thank you for saying that before.
I'm not saying, but you've been listening to him for 10 years. And it's the thing is you've got the familiarity with the style and the age of the music. And a lot of the newer dancers who are coming into blues without that Lindy Hop background, who haven't had a lot of this old music thrown at them, especially, if you've been Lindy hopping for either before or after groove, you know about the old stuff. And you certainly, if you were dancing, early on, know about the jump blues. So we have this group of dancers who doesn't really have familiarity. And as DJs on the social floor, as entertainers, we gravitate towards music that our dancers can dance to.
All right, moving on from that, we've got a little feedback from a couple of folks here, and we're going to let Keith take care of that.
Yep. One brief piece of email, and it's from Doug Sutton from Indiana. He says, "Hey guys, just started listening, and I think it's great to hear DJs talk about their craft. I'm still a pretty young DJ, and it really helps bring focus to my sets." I think Doug's listening to a different show.
Oh, stop it.
Well, especially after today, because there's been so little focus.
There's a lot of music, and that's what's important. If Doug's taking good music out of this, I'm pretty happy.
It's true.
And that was the other thing I got. I got some feedback from folks over Shout for who listened, and they were pretty happy with things. So that made me feel good.
Yep. And our last piece of feedback this month is just it's a little bit of a promo spot from Damon. So I'll let him talk.
Hey, this is Damon. I was just calling to let you guys know that Down Home Blues will be happening in San Francisco August 5th, 7th, and 8th. We will be having DJ Stephen Watkins, Julie Brown, Witten Frank, and Ryback for our music, and we will be having a slew of instructors, actually our largest set of instructors to date. We'll be having Dexter and Michelle, Rule and Mike the Girl, Heidi, Rhea, myself, and we will also be having Dan and Kelly coming back. That's it. I hope to see everyone there.
All right, I think we're done there, Keith. Did we get everything in the however many hours we recorded on this?
Yeah, I think so. I think we've covered well more than we meant to, and well more than you probably wanted to hear. But that's okay.
Are you kidding? They love us.
We're working on an average show length. So last month was really short. This month is really long. Next month we will have a little bit more time to focus on getting just a lot of music back for you. We are definitely looking, if you've got some feedback or some comments about what you might want to hear musically next month, definitely go on and send it in. So we've got something we can structure around. Otherwise, we'll just make something up, and you guys will be forced to listen to it. We do love your feedback because it really does help us get some good direction for the show.
And we get to have fun with it, and we occasionally learn new words and phrases like wangle.
Or we get to, hear Damon Stone on stage at a comedy club is what it sounded like. I don't know what all that laughter in the background was. Maybe I'm just not going to speculate. So thank you guys so much for listening.
You have to live with a man. Good Lord.
Well, it's true, but it's been a blast. We will definitely see you next month.
Have fun and let us know what else you want to hear from us, because we do love a good fight around here.
Yep. Info at confessingtheblues.com or 608-432-5837. Or I guess, if you want to find us on Facebook, we're there. You can fan us. It's facebook.com/ I think it's Confessing the Blues Podcast. Whatever it is, we'll put the link in the show notes. If you search for Confessing the Blues Podcast on Facebook, we'll pop up. Other than that, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next month.
See y'all later.